right, and now it is time for our binge of the week, which is Master of None. We'll be talking about season three. We'll also be talking about seasons 1 and 2 as well. Of course, this is the brainchild of Aziz Ansari. Lena Waithe also became or gained prominence as a writer on this. And basically, her and Aziz worked really closely on season three. So, yeah, let's get this started. Let's see. Let's start with Yemi first. Yemi, what were your thoughts on season three of Master of None?
Season 3 of Master of None. It was a contrived effort in masking content or poignancy in long drawn out shots akin to Italian French film. And 4 years later, the main character is not a part of it. Well, like in 2 episodes, and it follows Denise and her life arc. I did not like. I don't think I understood what they were trying to do, and I could appreciate showing a story of two Black lesbian women as far as representation. But as far as a entertaining or even funny, I was searching through the comedy like it was a barrel bin at the checkout aisle at Walmart. Like, what is this? I don't understand. And I just didn't. I don't know. I really like the quirkiness and not to say Master of None season 1 and 2 didn't have its own homages to Italian and French film, which it did, but it was way quicker as far as the writing and just a little bit more. Since Aziz, it was a little bit more autobiographical about Aziz and his, I guess, love life, and just the hard shift to this really long shots of people dancing or in a laundromat just did not do it for me. I knew what they were going for, but I was like, nah, this ain't it. This is not as poignant as they think it is. And I think the director and the producer and like Aziz, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you could tell that he's not a good director or he doesn't have that eye, because a lot of I was like, why is he, what, this is just arbitrary. Why are you doing this? There was no, in my opinion, there was no real reason to a lot of the movement, the DP movement, and just it was a great
Just for
location
our
that they
layman's,
found.
what do you mean by DP movement?
I like just the decisions they made as far as the shots were concerned. I just didn't understand a lot of these lingering shots on two people, or just on like, what, you want me to sit in their emotion with you? Yeah, I guess, yeah. I'm just staring at the screen. But if I'm not even connected to the character, then I'm just gonna atrophy and be listless as far as what I'm watching, which was for the most part, except for, what was it, episode 3? Oh, the where she was trying to become pregnant. That was a good episode. I could sympathize with it, but again, I think the story for me wasn't like, I've never been in any of these situations as a man, so it felt I could sympathize but not empathize. So I'm looking at it from an outsider looking in, even as far as watching the story. I'm like, oh, that's messed up, but I don't know how that feels trying to get pregnant. So just from that kind of framework, it just, I was just like, yeah, the relationship stuff is okay. Yeah, what are you saying about relationships that hasn't been said in a show? Nothing. Yeah, relationships are hard. People cheat. People try to get pregnant. Like, yeah, that's hard, but that's not nothing that is necessarily a gem of knowledge, a crumb of construction. Like, oh wow, I really learned something from watching this scene, or yeah, that really hit. The only thing that really hit for me is when Aziz's character and his girlfriend was like arguing in front of a couple. I'm like, oh, I've been there before on both ends, the arguing couple and the couple watching the couple arguing. But outside of that, I didn't really feel any connection to any of the characters. And I don't know. It's like, I don't even think they should call this like a season 3 of Masters of None. It's not the same show whatsoever, or the same tone. What, 5 episodes? It seemed a little slapped together, if I'm being honest. And they're like, we're going to be artistic with this. We're going to have long shots. We're going to have just like we're gonna use film. We're gonna go back to film. It seemed like a film thesis, like a master's class, like film project, which is fine, but it's like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my take on it. It was like it was nice to look at. I get what they were going for, but I don't think they executed it at all.
All right. Yummy comedy bringing the heat. All right, let's go to Danny Brana. Danny Brana, what was your thoughts on season 3 of Master of None?
I disagree. I liked it overall. And I get where you're coming from, Yemi, in a lot of regards. Yeah, I don't think like you're off base. This is not one of those situations where I'm like, how did you not see this? I totally get what you're saying. With a lot of different things. So let me just jump into this, I guess. So like, yeah, I loved it overall. Like you were saying, Yemi, this is not even close to the original tone established in the first 2 seasons of the show. Basically the only sort of remaining relic or vestigial aspect of the first 2 seasons, I would say, are the exploration of these themes on love and complicated relationships and navigating your life and navigating relationships, all the while you have the 2 competing interests of the people involved or more. We had love triangles in season 2, of course, as they're trying to basically figure out what they want to do with their life, in which all of our characters are all too cognizant of the fact that you only live once, #YOLO. So that's like the one thing that sort of remains, but it really is a reinvention. And I do have to, before getting into, I mean, I said that I like it, but I do have to, regardless of whether or not I did like it, applaud Aziz and everyone involved in this for taking the risks to make that much of a tonal shift, to make this sort of risky take on and attach the same label to this show, basically. And I know that Aziz is basically saying, he said in certain interviews that he knows that he's going to lose people with this. He's like, look, this is what it is, and you're either getting on board or you're not. And that's kind of what it is. So I applaud that. I kind of think of it as like the Radiohead or like the Beatles, bands like this who have reinvented themselves over and over again. And the sound is completely different from the one that's established earlier on in their careers. And some people get on board, some people don't. Some new people get on board, some people don't. The only difference is for this, and I haven't really seen it done with a TV show like this, but the difference is it's not as though they kept the same ensemble and just changed the tone. They basically changed the ensemble insofar as this became a Lena White's show, essentially, which is a big deal. It's like, I don't know if like the Beatles were basically like, hey, this is the fucking Ringo album. It's like, oh, we're doing it. I'm going to be singing from the drums the whole time. Do. So that is a cool thing to me. But I did like the cinematography. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. I did think that it added...
what cinematography? What movement in the camera did you see that I did not see?
Well, cinematography doesn't have to do with necessarily movement of the camera. That's not what I'm talking about.
You mean the shot competition of like a full shot with 2 people in it? That's like basic camera. That's like basic camera work. No, I'm sorry, but you're saying cinematography. I'm like, okay, are you talking about like this is a 2 medium shot?
I'm not saying that I'm not talking about like these were technically difficult things. I think that there was interesting use of shots to achieve a certain tone or to add to the experience. Now, that wasn't always the case with the cinematography. I'm going to agree with you that like a lot of scenes where it was like, all right, we're in another dance scene, or another point where Lena White was like literally just like eating a cheeseburger at the beginning of an episode in her car listening to music. I'm like, that doesn't add anything. You're just like taking the piss. And it was bloated in that regard with certain scenes. But then other scenes, like I look at, and we're going to talk about this a bit more in depth in chapter 4, the whole IVF episode, where where Alicia who's played by Naomi Aki, where I was like, wait, why are we including this laundry scene? But then it actually made sense because it was taking us on an experience, on a journey with her through the whole IVF, through the whole pregnancy process, where it's like she had an appointment and then there was the laundry scene and then it was another appointment. So it created that space. It created that sense of like the sort of mundanity of her existence as she's going through this process. So that added something. Another thing that I can think of is in the episode where things really get rocky between the two lovers, Naomi Aki and Lena White's characters, where they're using the coats on the hooks. I thought that was something that was a really clever usage of cinematography or a shot that I thought added to the overall aesthetic of the episode and added value. And I thought it was a clever little thing that they did, basically. So yeah, didn't always work, but sometimes it did. And when it did, it was cool, basically. The narrative is decent, obviously. I think that a lot of this is carried by Naomi Aki because she's just a brilliant actress. Lena Waithe a bit less so, shall I say, and she would admit that herself. And she talked to Aziz about whether or not she should get acting lessons or an acting coach for this. And I think it did work as her being, her raw self juxtaposed to the sort of classically trained Naomi Aki. I thought that their interplay was good. But the narrative itself, while interesting, wasn't particularly groundbreaking, but it was kind of cool. I am a fan of foreign films like this. I'm a huge fan of like the likes of Fellini and neorealism from that era of Italian film, French films, things that I had to watch either as like the things that I was exposed to as a kid and things that like I had to watch for university for like Italian classes, French classes and shit like that. So I'm like sort of primed for that slow moving sort of style. And I appreciate it, but yeah, at times it definitely fucking dragged, especially sort of like the early middle bit. But I think in like episode 3, 4, and 5, it really recovered, and I was better able to emotionally connect with the characters, especially Alicia, Naomi Aki's character. Because yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't really, because Master of None hadn't really involved us that much in Denise's character and her narrative arc and her relationships, that I wasn't immediately connected with these characters, if only just like by virtue of my love for Lena Waithe as, just for being who she is, basically. But yeah, that was a little bit lacking. And in a universe where Malcolm and Marie exists, and in a universe where we've had several sort of quarantine projects like this that are kind of isolated, single shot sort of vibe, this doesn't do it. This doesn't do it. Yeah, Euphoria as well. Yeah, comes to mind. This doesn't measure up to those, especially the first of its kind for Euphoria, for example. And like the dialogue of Malcolm and Marie is different gravy compared to this. This doesn't have like incredible dialogue. Yeah, not funny. And I don't know. I mean, it mentions that
not even charming. I'm sorry. It's like, what is going on here, man?
Yeah, I think that maybe they could have done more to increase the schmaltz, if I'm using that term correctly, or the charm. This is lacking a little bit in charmsicles. So yeah, not perfect, but I really did enjoy it, and especially just getting an eye in terms of representation for love within the LGBTQ community, especially with regard to pregnancy. It's really interesting. And yeah, totally different. I think having separation from seasons 1 and 2 of Master of None, haven't watched them since they premiered, basically. It allowed me to sort of view this for what it was and not have expectations for it to be a by the numbers season 3 of Master of None, as it were.
Got you. Yeah. You guys make good points. It's like, I did enjoy it. The representation thing definitely was the biggest thing for me. And I just was happy to see something different, and I'm glad that I'm glad they took risks and they tried it. Did they land the dismount? It's hard to say. There were some parts I really, really enjoyed, and some parts that I thought fell flat. I wanted more Aziz. I wanted more of his backstory. Maybe if they incorporated him a little bit more with Lena Waithe and what she was going through, and I don't know. It's hard to say, but I could appreciate them trying to take a risk and trying to do something different. And I know a lot of the reason why Aziz wasn't in this is probably because of the accusations and things that he received some years ago now. and maybe he doesn't feel comfortable enough, just starting and being like, oh, it's me and Arnold and we're having fun, or we're in wherever, and it's just, I guess he just feels like he wanted to do something that was a little more
Yeah.
subdued,
Well,
you know.
do you think? I mean, like, do you guys think that like they could have returned with that sort of tone? Like, either Aziz clearly made the choice to not do that. I don't know if he necessarily did it because of those things. I think so. But do you think that they could have just returned with a season 3 by the numbers, like you say, with him, Arnold, Brian out in the streets saying, cafe lattes are my favorite thing?
It would have been tough. I mean, especially if they try to keep it sort of true to life with like COVID and that type of stuff, or if it would be a thing where it's just like, oh, COVID didn't exist and we're just out and about and we're hanging out in New York. I think it would have been pretty difficult to pull that off.
Do
But
you mean just from like a logistical standpoint, or
yeah,
from like a tonal? Let's say whatever the scenario is, they were able to do that. They were able to film something that pretended like COVID wasn't happening, or they were able to maintain a similar tone while acknowledging COVID. Do you think that would have been possible?
yeah, I think in a way it could have been possible. I mean, it would have to be somewhat different. And like, I think this was a drastic change, but they could have done something that was maybe less drastic and like similar to the tone of the first two seasons, but at the same time, like change it up a bit, bring in some new characters. Maybe have them travel to somewhere else, like outside of the country or anything. Like, I feel like it was just such a drastic change, and I think that's why the reviews were so mixed, because the first two seasons just were totally different, and it just really throws you off, because in general I thought season 3 was not bad. It's like there were parts I liked, but it was like totally different. And I would like to have seen Arnold pop up at some point or whatever, and maybe just have like a couple of like fun scenes with like like Lena and Arnold and Aziz just like doing something together. It doesn't have to be like out in the streets in New York in a bar. It could just be like them out in the fucking country just talking about life shit. Like, I think people would be more receptive to that, because that's one of the things I liked about the first two seasons was like their relationship and their friendship, which is really interesting to me because they're like three different people from three very different backgrounds. And I think that would have been really cool to like focus on that and then have them in a different setting. But you know, that's
Yeah.
just
What
my
about you? I
thoughts.
mean, do you think they could have returned with a by the number season 3?
Yes. Maybe not logistically because they shot this in COVID, but to piggyback off what Winston said, yeah, have it focused on something else and have an episode dedicated to each of them. I think shows like look at what Euphoria did. That was a single, or Malcolm and Marie. That was a single not single shot. That was a on one set. Like on one set location. They could have had isolated episodes for where each character was in their lives currently. But shout out to Lena. She's kind of running things right now as far as like creating uh black black art. I just I don't know. It's not the tone shift is really what, because I just watched a couple episodes before we got on. It's just a
Some of the
different
older
show.
episodes, you mean?
Yeah, some of the early episodes, and it's just a different tone. It's much more charming, much more heartfelt, much more underdog tone. You're rooting for what's the character's name? Disease character's name?
Dev.
Dev in it, like to get the girl. It's an archetype. It's a story we've seen, and there's something to be said about familiarity, and just something being like, oh, I recognize this in me. I've been the underdog before, which I guess I relate to, as far as my dating life has been, or my dating history has been. And not to say just because it's following LGBTQ um archetypes or stories that I'm like, oh, I don't care about that. That's not what it was for me. It was more so just the tonal shift was just like, okay, there's nothing really cute about this, or what I was enamored with at the beginning when I watched Master of None when it came out. I was like, oh, this is kind of new. This is kind of fresh. It's like a different take on the trope of like a hopeless lover. Whereas this was more about the trope of like relationship struggles. And I was like, oh, all right, that's what we're doing. But it wasn't like a happy-go-lucky thing. And I just it's so hot, and I was watching. I was like, all right, this is I'm not here.
Don't let the weather factor into your
But
review.
it
That's
did. It
not
did. I'm
fair.
sweating watching this like couple fall apart and like they're cheating. It's like, listen, I fucked up. All right, I'm a piece of shit. I cheated too. It's like, all right, this is Maury. What am I watching? You know, long drawn out like shots of them just dancing. Granted, the jams was packed. They had some really good jams.
Yeah, shout
that
out
I
to
remember.
Jesse Norman.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
yes.
soundtrack was popping. Shout out to the score keep or whatever the score engineer. But outside of that, I was just like, all right, Lena, this one, you'll get a pass. You know what I mean? She's done enough. She's written enough things and produced and been a part of enough lexicon of content and media out there where I respect her. It's like, all right, this was something that was artistic that you guys did that didn't work for me. Other people like Danny might love it. Like Winston, he said it was good, but for me, I was like, that's too no.
So like I do think that they could
Don't want
have
it.
I do think that they technically could have done a by the numbers season 3. I
Yeah, why
don't think
not?
like we weren't ready for it in terms of like watching seasons 1 and 2.
He
and I watched
apologized
those
in his
after,
special about him
Yeah.
saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't know."
Yeah, so if it is down to is the world ready for Aziz to come back and us to highlight him in a positive way through the character Dev, I think I am. And in terms of are we ready for that sort of tone in the middle of or on the hopefully tail end of this pandemic? I think so. Definitely going back and watching season 1 and season 2 after watching season 3, I definitely developed a stronger appreciation actually for both projects, but mainly for seasons 1 and season 2. And that sort of charm is just like I kind of like that's more what I need than the hard-hitting reality of season 3. But I do appreciate them also taking that risk of this is kind of reality. It doesn't happen this clean. Things looked to be on the up for the most part for Dev, and I guess we can kind of start to talk about this decision to have Dev not doing so well. He's living with his parents in Queens, which not totally abnormal, especially when the context of certain immigrant cultures. I know for Indian, it's not abnormal for a couple to be living with the parents of one of the members of that couple, and many other communities as well. But not doing well in that regard. He's losing his hair. He's not getting the gigs that he was. There's no BFF with Bobby Cannavale or Cupcake Wars in sights for Dev. And clearly the relationship not going so well. Arguing in front of Denise and Alicia, and yeah. So what do we think of that choice for Dev to be in this place?
It was pretty sad to watch, like, because I mean, at first it's like, oh, they come over for the dinner party talking about Dev and his lady friend, his companion, his partner, and everything starts off like, oh, it's good, everything's going well, and then all of a sudden they start talking about, yeah, we at my parents' house, and then they start arguing, and I was like, this is
well, they started early with those digs, right? He was like, oh, I'm working on this show or something like that. He's like, oh, you mean that she did that correction?
Oh,
like,
that's right. He's like, oh, well, you're actually working as like an assistant or whatever, whatever it was.
I was like, whoa, that was unnecessary.
I was like, this
unnecessary
is
Have you guys ever been in a situation like that with the partner where they start cutting you down in front of other people?
I know it's definitely happened. I've definitely seen it with other couples. Not so much. Definitely not in this relationship. That hasn't happened. All of our whatever spats we have, we've managed to keep in house. But I know exactly what you're talking about. So you should have the fucking wherewithal, no matter how bad your relationship is going, to not do that. Like that is that's just ugly.
It is. It made me cringe a little bit. It was hard to see. I was like, ooh, this is, ooh, I just felt bad. I mean, it's interesting because he was doing really well, at season 2, and then he had that relationship with the girl from France,
Francesca, clearly, or from Modena, but clearly that didn't pan out. I don't know if like the speculation was ever solved on Reddit whether they were actually together, if she did actually come back, but whatever the case, that didn't work out. He didn't get back together with Rachel. That shit did not happen.
Nope, it sure did. And I mean, look, I guess the good thing is it's like, all right, look, you're trying to portray that, like, this is what happens in life. Like, you go through your ebbs and flows, your ups and downs, and like right now he's at the down period. And hopefully, like if they do a season 4, yeah, and hopefully it can bounce back. Things will be a little more upbeat, and then maybe we could get into some different things, like bring back some of the things that made seasons 1 and 2 so just like charming and creative, and like makes you just feel good vibes, and like maybe like add in some new things. You know what I mean? Maybe he starts a new career, but like it's something slightly different,
Yeah.
and
I think at that point we would be ready to root for Dev's character. Like as much as I think that he adequately apologized, and as much as I think we were ready for, like I said, like a similar tone to that of the first 2 seasons, there's something to be said about like how would it appear? Aziz does have to be cognizant of like how would it appear if I just am continuing to make myself the hero after everything that happened and things are going well for me. You know what I mean? It might come off the wrong way.
yeah, that makes sense.
If that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
it fits in thematically with what was some of the things that were developed in the first 2 seasons. This idea of like, well, sometimes you have to nurture there's like an analogy. We has like that conversation with H. John Benjamin about like the kindling. It's like you got to find the right kindling. The idea of that conversation he had about the love percentages, like sometimes it's at 10%,
Right.
and then later in the day it could be at 90%. The shit it fluctuates.
Very true.
And it's interesting that they took the choices, Rachel, and I don't know what happened with Francesca, but they took the choices to live their lives to sort of YOLO, go to Italy, go to Japan, but that can come at the expense of the longer portion of your life, which is the one where the road is maybe a bit more clearly mapped out for you. But that's the larger portion of our lives. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah. I mean, what'd you think of sort of down on his luck Dev in season 3?
I didn't care. I didn't care about him. I didn't care about him. I didn't. I didn't give a shit.
Is it because of his voice?
I just forgot. Like I haven't heard Aziz like come out from my speakers for a long time. So when he started talking, I was like, "Is this his real voice? Like this is how?" I thought he was doing a bit, but then I looked at some interviews. I'm like, "This is how this man sounds."
And it's different when it's not paired with the usual charm of the show.
Yeah, it's just like I was like, "Whoa, dude, why do you sound like the Munchkin King has finally come?" Tra la 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 la. Like it was just, I was like, "Oh Jesus."
He was spitting facts though. The idea, like where Denise was saying that she felt like a failure because of their failed relationship, is like, that's one of the hardest things to do, man.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. I didn't really. I mean, yeah. I mean, acting is a rough gig. High, low lows, right? Peaks and valleys. That's how stand up is as well. So that's not uncommon. So that didn't really shock me. A lot of people don't make it as actors or comedians. There's a small percentage of people that you see that are actually working actors and comedians. 98, I'll give you 96% of people don't make it.
Yeah.
So that didn't really shock me, or it wasn't something that was like, oh wow, it was like, okay, cool. You got it would have been either he's middling and he's working, or he made it and he found a vehicle, or he's back with his parents, which is usually like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about chapter 4 from season 3 a little bit, that IVF episode that was heavy? I know we talked about it a little bit, but
yeah, I think we have to take a moment to highlight this, because this is where it really picked up for me. And while it was interesting, I guess it was the previous episode where they were still together and trying to conceive, and they split up and everything. This, seeing her, Alicia, go through this on her own, and seeing just in general what one must go through at this age, I think this is like must viewing for all men who are interested in dating women, especially in your latter 20s, early 30s, because you have to appreciate the biology of women and what it takes to be pregnant. I mean, just quickly going back to season 1, it's interesting to me just in terms of thematically within the show, narratively speaking, that it started with him and Rachel and then needing a plan B, like trying to prevent a pregnancy that could all too easily take place. And then it's progressed to highlighting how difficult it can be and how much effort one must put in to achieve pregnancy in certain situations, particularly if you are, 35, 36, 37, and particularly as well if you are queer. I loved that scene where they talked about the different insurance policies that they had for, like, there's an insurance policy if
Oh
you're like
yeah,
eaten by a shark or some shit, but there's not one for same sex couples.
yeah. It's
uh
bullshit, man.
is ridiculous. And
It
this
is
is another
ridiculous.
another aspect of the cinematography that I thought added to that experience and that sense of holy shit, what people must go through. One, there's the shot with all the, like, different stacks of syringes, or the not the syringes, or whatever the vials are,
The
essentially, that she
vials of
has to,
medication.
yeah, the vials of medication that she has to inject. Just seeing how many of those there are and what she clearly has to go through, that was fucking insane. The scenes at the doctor's office using the sonogram or whatever they're using with the wand that goes where it goes. I thought that
Yeah,
was really interesting. And shout outs to Cordelia. She's MVP of of that episode. Love Cordelia.
absolutely.
Um, and yeah, it's just like, it's insane, man. And it just goes to show you, like, that I think it highlights an issue with society that I feel like women, people in general, are so pressured to live their lives and establish a career and do so many different things, but all the while you want to achieve pregnancy. For many people, it's difficult to balance those things. And I think that's because of the way our systems are set up and society is set up. And I think there are many things we could do to easily rectify the process, whether it's just those simple things like insurance policies, childcare prospects, things like that. But also just the sort of rat race that we're all forced to run, that is counterintuitive with procreation, which at the end of the day, like, I understand people's individual takes on whether or not you should procreate, but if we all don't, then this whole thing ends, right? So
Yeah,
it is important.
it is. That's it is. No, that's a very some poignant points there. Yeah. So what's that from there? Maybe we should talk about like what do you make of the show's overall takes on love, life, and marriage, and how accurate we think of those things. Should we play the clip right here?
Yeah. So do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, so this is a clip from season 1 of Master of None, when Dev and Rachel are at a wedding, a friend's wedding, and they're having a sort of an imaginary wedding in their mind of what was sort of going through their mind at the time. They're sort of like thinking like, is this relationship going to work? Is this a long-term thing? And so this is a clip of that.
Do you, Dev, take Rachel to be your partner in a possibly outdated institution in order to have a quote-unquote normal life? Are you ready to give up an idealistic search for a soulmate and try to make it work with Rachel so you can move forward with your life?
I do.
And do you, Rachel, promise to make a crazy eternal bond with this gentleman who you happen to be dating at this stage in your life when people normally get married?
I do.
I now pronounce you two people who might realize they've made an unfortunate mistake in about 3 years.
That's a great clip from
yeah, like
Really
where was
brilliant
that in
scene.
season 3? Where was
yeah.
the meta take on?
Yeah, man. Yo, so Yemi, man, what you think about like just the overall just love, life, marriage? Does it feel accurate to you? Like from the
I
show.
think love is changing, and we're going back to these ideas that were flirted with at the beginning of civilization, where a man can have where the alpha is shared by women, more communal, more of a oh boy, the lights turned off as he talks about polyamory, more communal kind of based, community kind of based, like sexual partners,
Polyamory, you're saying?
polyamory. And I think
And orgies.
Yeah, sure. I wasn't saying orgies, but I don't know. I think monogamy is hard and unnatural, but since it's the frame work of the turn of the century, due to property and how it's set up in our society, in Western society, that monogamy is the way to get tax breaks, to get married, is recognized by the state. Especially when you have kids, being married, just makes your life easier. It makes your kids life easier. Just seeing shows, especially as an older millennials, I'm starting to see the flaws of monogamy, or just how it's so easy to break down. Once somebody cheats, it's like that's it. You don't love that person. It's almost like black and white. It's not accepted. It's not even considered human nature, right? It's not even considered human nature
When
to
it very much is human nature.
yeah, exactly. It's like it's
Right.
human nature in men and women. People say, do men cheat, do women cheat? Men and women cheat. Women just don't get caught. Women are just way better at it than men. Men are like staring at a woman's breast like, hubba hubba, ow.
Danny,
Just
stop looking at
focus.
that woman's mom's
Yeah,
pubis.
yeah. It's like and just watching the show, it's just a allegory for that. Monogamy sucks sometimes, and sometimes it's great, and sometimes sometimes you think in your relationship could be top of the morning great, and then she leaves you or he leaves you, and you were blindsided because you didn't pick up on the cues he or she or they or them were leaving you. Like
Yeah, or your spouses could have rented out a B&B, which was the house that they actually lived in when they were married, and they're in a bath together.
yeah,
That can happen
exactly.
too.
So
Right.
I just think that shows going forward should show. I mean, they have shows about being poly and being open and things like that, but I don't know. I think maybe with millennials and the next generation, zillennials, I mean, I don't think poly will be introduced as a viable, like, you can't marry two men or two women, because then you'll become way more financially stable, and that wouldn't help, especially like lower socioeconomic people. Because I think if poly was recognized by the state, I think there'd be so many people that are poor that will be well to do, just because you have more income. Do you know what I mean? And you'd have more rights, and you'd be able to buy property, which is actually like financial liberation, is through real estate. That's the easiest way, the poor man's way to becoming rich. So outside of that, all that socioeconomic stuff, I just think monogamy is hard, man. You got to be honest with your spouse, and or your significant other or your partner. And like the way Denise's character did it, I don't know. They were like, they were separate, right? They were different. One was kind of like this well-to-do writer, very smart, prolific intellect, but also kind of like a slob, which is what the series kind of put forth for her
Yeah, she had
character.
like sort of, yeah, there are a lot of hetero dudes that could identify with
Yeah, yeah.
Denise's like approach to relationships.
Exactly. Like, yo, I'm just chilling. I'm trying to smoke my weed.
I got you this house. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like, fuck off. Like, get off. Yo, listen, look how you living. Let me. And it's like, yo, I mean, one could argue. She's like, yo, I bought this house. Yeah, I'm gonna smash another chick. What of it? I still love you. There's a lot of people that have that mind frame that will rationalize their cheating. It's like, that was just delay. I still love you. You're my main bae. You know what I mean? So I thought that was an interesting allegoric kind of storytelling feature that they had. And then they ended up back together or whatever. She signed the papers, and then at the end of the day, that's still like number one bae. You know what I mean?
they
Or I
have their
don't know.
respective partners and children at the end. So it's like, it's almost, it's I that's where I think is really interesting, because it is really interesting how they end up. And I do have to applaud the show for doing this, that it's such a messy ending, in terms of, it's good that they're enjoying this moment, but they're going to have to go back to their normal lives. It's kind of showing a little bit of like what would happen if a Francesca and Dev stayed together, right? Because it's like, all right, they're vibing together, but what does that look like realistically? She has to like leave her life in Italy and everything that entails. And same deal for like if they have rekindled their love, what does that mean in terms of how that plays out? It's basically impossible given the structures of monogamy, like you say. But like that's just where we are. I think, like you say, with our structures, monogamy is kind of the way. I don't know what child rearing would look like with a more accepted sort of polyamory approach to relationships in our society.
I think it's because it's not, we don't know how to be poly, even if we wanted to be. We there's no rules, there's no guidebooks, and I feel like there's no guidebooks on monogamy. The only rule that's monogamous is show up to love every day like it's your job and don't cheat, which is very shallow as far as a rule book, whereas like being in a long-term monogamous relationship is way harder than just those two rules. Whereas poly, I wouldn't even know how to navigate that. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
being
yeah.
open
As
or
much as I
being
could be like, well, yeah,
non-monogamous.
I would love to be able to have 10,000 women in my own harem. No, I don't want that shit because the other stuff that comes with it is like,
Oh, not 10,000. That's a lot.
I'm
What are you,
ambitious.
King
I'm
Midas
ambitious
over here. I
Yes.
got
That's
10,000
Will
women.
Chamberlain.
trying to live like a sultan.
Yeah.
Will Chamberlain on this.
But I do think there's something to be said about how, if you, I'm not getting into red pill stuff and all that stuff, but like how alpha men or the 1% or the 2% of men move. I mean, John Mulaney, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, all divorced. Rich is, like as far as this echelon of like men, you know what I mean? Like Jay-Z cheated. So it's just like, well, what these
Nobody's
are
immune.
No, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, well, it don't work.
Half the
Obviously
time.
at the highest, and there's obviously exceptions to the rule. People have been together.
Well, I think it works less often at like the highest sort of like celebrity status. Like they have a different approach to marriage. That's kind of like we're going steady, basically. It's like, hey, we're gonna be Bennifer for a few months, and then that'll be over. But anyway, that's just my thought. But I totally get what you're saying.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think monogamy is messy and it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer if being polyamory or being open is the answer either. I'm just saying I think human nature at its core is kind of ugly, and we try to put some gold lipstick on it and be like, oh, she's ready for the ball. But it's like at the base of it, human nature is really just guttural, and we're still working from our reptilian brain. And I think the way society has set up human nature is to be on a lower vibrancy of your root chakra. Sex sells, thirst trapping. These are kind of lexicons and things that are embedded in us just as a society. And I think we have to break those chains to kind of figure out. And sexuality, gender, we're throwing that in now. I think things are going to drastically change in the next 30 to 50 years as far as like monogamy not being the go-to kind of checkbox here.
Marriage as an institution.
Yeah, marriage as an institution. I think we're going to start seeing it.
Socially imposed monogamy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that shit, I mean, the wedding culture, especially in the United States, oh boy.
Makes so much money.
Yeah.
So much money.
We have a very highly socially imposed monogamy situation here in the States.
For sure.
I'm bought in, like we've talked about books, me and you, Yemi, like Sex at Dawn, which is a really interesting book if you want to check that out, guys. And as much as I know about like human nature and relationships and sex or whatever, I'm still, I'm buying into monogamy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we got to wrap up pretty quickly, but before we give our reviews, let's just do a quick, if there is a season 4 of Master of None, just in a few words, what would you like to see? Let's start with Danny first.
Yeah, I want to see a return to the tone. I want to see the return to exploring. One of the things I loved about the older seasons was their focus, their ability to have a longer term focus on a theme such as romance or relationships, but also explore a bunch of other shit along the way and highlight a bunch of different stories, like the Thanksgiving episode from season 2, like the parents and like focusing on I'm saying like a lot. It's focusing on parents that immigrated and the sacrifices they made, or other things like dating. I want more exploration of different things all at once, and I do want Return of the Tone, and I think we're ready to see a comeback story for Dev, whatever that looks like. Maybe them teaming up together, Dev and Denise.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to see some similar things. I want them to come back together. I want to see, just like a rejuvenation of like their lives and just living and different stories. I think that one episode, like the Thanksgiving episode in season 2, was great, but also that other episode where they did things from the perspective of like a doorman at a building, and then a deaf woman that worked at a deli,
Yes.
and the cab drivers living together. Oh, that was a great episode. So I want more stuff like that, more different stories from different people's perspectives, and then just more fun, more charm. And yeah, that's what I want. What about
Turn
you,
the
Yemi?
charmsicles back up.
Yeah.
I want some AC.
Someone
want
get
some
it. Yemi an
AC.
AC, please.
I don't think
I think I'm
that
gonna
Master of
I'm
None is
give
going to reduce.
Jeff Bezos some money and buy an AC.
Yeah.
It's cold in
That's it.
space.
I want to see, just a return to better storytelling. Maybe don't lean on the Italian French film noir genre so much, and just tell me a good story.
All right.
I'm not asking for much. I'm a simple man. I just
I
want
dig it.
some air conditioning and a good story.
All right. That sounds good. All right. Let's wrap things up. Here we come with our final reviews. All right. So how many? Let's see. Should we say Denise smoked joints? Do you want to give season 3, or does that work?
Yeah, that
Poverty
works. We
Square
use legal in New
cookies.
York City now.
Oh, okay.
That's right. It's legal. So how many Denise smoked joints would you give season 3 of Master and None? Yemi.
2.
Okay. 2 J's. What about you, Danny?
I am going to go with 3 joints and 1 roach, so 3.5. But like a soft 3.5, like a 3.25.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like in the same plane as Danny. I'm like I think I'm gonna say 3.5 also. Yeah, it was good. Like there was some holes here and there, but enjoyable enough. 3.5.
Overall, appreciated it.
Yes, overall appreciate it. The same. Let us know what you think if you've watched it. Hit us up, Binge Society Podcast at gmail.com. Hit us up on Instagram at Binge Society, or on TikTok and Twitter at Binge Society Pod. And let's have a convo. We're curious to hear what y'all thought about Master of None season 3.
And what are we binging next week?
Yes. So next week, get ready, because In the Heights is coming out, HBO Max. So you can watch it for free on there. Of course, you can watch it in theaters as well. But we'll be discussing that on our next episode.
Yes, indeed. Grab yourself a nutcracker, open up a fire hydrant or 2, and go to the bodega, get a chopped cheese.
You know what?
Arroz con pollo.
I was avoiding the racial tropes.
Y plantain.
Let the record show.
What? That's where you get rice and chicken.
You definitely get the platanos. Yeah. There's a lot of good
What?
Dominican
How's
food
that
in the Heights.
racist? That's what the Dominicans eat that.
It's my neighborhood, baby.
Yeah.
It's my neighborhood.
In the Heights. Anyway, that's
So it's
what
gonna be
that
fun.
episode's going to be.
That's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun episode. So watch that, and get ready for some more fun. You could find me, Winston Brewington, on Instagram at Radio Win.
You can find me, Danny Bronner, at Danny Bronner on Instagram.
And you can find me on Yemi Comedy, YEMI Comedy, on Instagram.
That's right. This man's Instagram blowing up these days. Follow him.
Trying to get your 3K. Trying to get that Andre.
All right, y'all. Stay up. Be safe. We'll be back next week. More content. Be good.
Let's pray that Yemi made it to the point that this podcast got released, because I'm a little bit worried about him.
Someone donated AC, please.
10,000 BTUs. Stat. My poor cat.
Go sit in the fridge, man. Go sit in the fridge.
He's still laying down on the floor. I hope he's okay.
Draw a cold bath. You'll be fine.
Stay cool out there, y'all. It's gonna be a hot summer. Hot blurred summer.
Yes, indeed. Sun's out, mom's out.
There you go. Peace out, y'all.
Peace.